So let's go to education because I think we are in a place right now where we might need to completely blow up our education system because it's not serving our children or the future of this country. What would you do there?
There's so much work to be done in our schools, and I've got two young kids again, so I understand
You
it.
have them in private school?
The autistic uh, older son is in a special needs school, and then the younger is in a public school
In New York.
in New York City. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's so many things we need to do in education. Number one, we have to pay teachers more, and the data clearly shows good teacher worth his or her weight in gold and better educational outcomes. Number two, you need more teachers because data also shows having 30, 40 kids per teacher is not great. Number three, we need to lighten up on standardized tests and let teachers actually teach the kids the way that the kids learning. You know, we invented the SAT during World War II to figure out which kids not to send to the front lines. That's really dark. And now we're treating every year like wartime and bludgeoning our kids with these tests. And it's uh, perverting and distorting our teachers' incentives and behaviors. Number four, we need to invest in vocational apprenticeship and technical education because right now we're overemphasizing college, and college is not the right fit for a lot of kids. And a lot of kids are starting college, not finishing. College is 2.5 times more expensive than when I was there, and so you'd end up with this massive debt load, sometimes without a degree. Number five, we should be emphasizing things that actually make your life better and don't pretend you're all on an assembly line to college. So that's social and emotional learning, financial literacy, the arts, managing technology, which is like an increasing part of life today, and things that the kids would actually get excited about. They can't just look up on their smartphone. And the last thing, I know this is long-winded, is that 2/3 of our kids' outcomes are determined outside of school. That's stress levels in the house, parental time, words read to the child, type of neighborhood. So we're getting increasingly frustrated with our schools because we're like, hey, what's wrong? Can't you teach our kids? And then the teachers all know it's like, I can control about 35% of your kids' outcome, and then 65% happens way before I even get there. And so if we want to actually give our kids a chance to learn, you would put money into the homes and in the hands of families and parents, and then create an environment at home where the kid actually has a fighting chance to learn. And then when they show up to school, they have a real chance to teach them.
So I love what you're saying about education, and one of the things I volunteer in public school system here in New York a good bit, and one of the things that I see is the lack of cultural competency in the public school system, and I feel like you can't talk about education without infusing that cultural competency in there. And so when you talk about education, I'm curious, as someone who's running education business, even though it was about secondary education.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that? Because I look at the disparity between how black and brown kids are policed in schools, how they're literally policed and punished in schools, as well as just how they're spoken to from time to time. And for me, I care deeply about those kids. And so I'm curious as to what you think government can do in relation to that at the ground level.
It's such an important observation and question. And as a parent, too, you see it, with your kids. And there are some things the government can do. Like the biggest thing is that we have to stop treating our schools like assembly lines, one size fits all. And essentially right now they're as much behavior modification as they are education. You know what I mean? And part of that is that you have student teacher ratios of 30-1. And so if you're a teacher in front of a bunch of kids, you don't have time or energy or bandwidth to
My mom grew up in the segregated South where there may have been as many as 40 kids in a class. And the difference was that the teacher lived in the neighborhood, went to the church, was accountable to the community, cared about each and every child. I don't know, there's there's a lot of data around that. I covered education for 4 years at the New York Daily News, and there's a lot of data around smaller class sizes, but that's not the main factor. I think what Drew is talking about in terms of a cultural awareness and understanding what that kid is going through and having enough concern about their future, their life, but can see a future. I don't know how we legislate that. I don't know how you as president can make that an edict as part of your education system, but it has to happen.
Yeah, I agree. It's not just a numbers thing. It's a based in community thing. It's an empathy thing. It's a humanity thing. And even when you drop your kid off in school, you can actually immediately pick up on whether it's a kind of teacher that's putting heart and soul into each and every kid. And then you feel super grateful. You feel like you're completely fine leaving your kid there. Or sometimes you drop your kid off and you feel like the teacher's priority is just to keep the kids breathing. And that's about it. And like whether or not they actually get that sort of nurturing. So the question is, how do you legislate that kind of atmosphere in the classroom? I think a lot of it is easing up on the testing and the assembly line nature of our schools, because right now there's this top-down orientation, and if you're a teacher, you feel like, well, how am I going to get evaluated? How do kids test at like a certain point in the year? And then anything that gets between you and your kids having a certain level of test result, then you see as like a barrier to your doing your job. Whereas a lot of times doing your job might be just sitting down individually with a kid and trying to meet them where they are or teach them in a way that's actually impactful for them, which might not be like a top-down approach.